Hey, welcome to another episode of the Michael Ketchen Show here with Matthew Hitchcock.
What are we doing, guys?
And enjoying my, I don't know if I want to call it a victory cigar or not, but America is back.
We think America is back.
Yes. No, we just lost. Half the people are offended already. But no, we wanted to come on and talk about the election right away because I know this is something that we've been monitoring closely. Mm-hmm. And there's a business impact. There's the country impact. There's the facts versus the news. And I don't know how you feeling about everything before I get into everything.
The facts and the news is an interesting one because prior to this, we kind of talked about, some of the stuff that we're going to go over. And it's very interesting that like when you try and search for data and pieces of information on, for example, I was listening to I was listening to Ben Shapiro and he was talking about how, a couple indicators were better under Trump than they were under Obama. When you actually try and go and research it, the narrative always goes back to, no, Obama had better jobs and this and that. And when you try and search stuff independently and you take out the names of people and you just go, all right, how was it back in 2010? Or how was it back in 2008? Then you start to get different details. But when you start putting in the actual presidential candidates, you get completely different analytics and data.
Dude, 100%. And the one thing that jumped out to me before we even get into the real estate business stuff that I thought was so smart, we talked about this after 2020 when they stole that one. And then when we looked at those
allegedly.
Numbers, allegedly. Some of understanding how media was changing. Now 2024 played out, and the graphics that maybe we can link to in the show notes that I know we shared. Trump going on the podcast and the viewership of doing Patrick Bet-David, doing Joe Rogan, doing Theo Vaughn. I don't know if he did some of the Daily Wire. He did a bunch of them. The viewership, it was almost like, I think it was like 250 million or 500 million views, right?
Yes.
And it was like, that has just so changed the times. And I guess I was amazed. Like, I think people tend to think of listeners in like a bucket, right? Like, I was talking to someone the other day, and they're like, "Yeah, Rogan, he's so right wing." I'm like, Joe Rogan's right wing. Have you ever actually listened to Joe Rogan? Joe Rogan.
I was about to say,
Democrat.
if you listened, he says he's a lifelong Democrat.
Yes, but he has common fucking sense.
Yeah.
And what he did on his show that I think helped Trump back to strategy, he came on, they didn't edit anything. It's a 3-hour deep dive. And a lot of people felt like they had been lied to with a perception because they can't think. And it swayed it. And I think it's interesting that television, one, mainstream media is dead, but also even their medium and the way people can, absorb content, YouTube shorts, in-depth interviews, a podcast lends to that. And Trump took advantage of that. And I just thought it was genius the way he played it.
It wasn't even the fact that it was only Trump that took advantage of it. And I don't know if it was Trump or if it was a combination of Rogan, but like all the people that were also supporting Trump also went on either a little bit before or a little after. He had Elon Musk that went on and was like driving the fact that like men have to go out and vote because we have a issue in this country where men generally don't vote. And that's why, things went a certain way the last time. So he went out and did that narrative. We had JD Vance that went on his podcast. So there was a bunch of people that RFK's been on, not recently, but he's been on before. But yeah, all these people that Rogan's aligned himself with in the first place, like prior to, then it just all led into the election. It filtered from there. It was crazy. Yeah. JD Vance was on Theo Vaughn too. Just talk shit for 3 hours. Yeah.
He's a smart guy. He's a sharp guy. And he's another one. Like, it's a perfect example. The media would have you believe he was portrayed a certain way. And then you actually listen to the interview and you go in depth and you actually read up on his actions, not his words. And it's funny how media can just manipulate things when you just take a clip or a sound. But like I try to tell people, and it's funny, man. I end up being a Trump supporter. I don't give a fuck about Trump.
This is the thing we always talk about.
But it's like I can think. I'm not an idiot, right? And the framework.
I think the thing that we also hate too is that people put you in a box as being a Trumper.
Yes.
Like right out the gate, and you're like,
or a never Trumper.
Yeah, but I'm not a Trumper. It's just the fact that so far a lot of the things that he said he was going to do, he did, and it worked.
Yes.
And the things that other people have done didn't work. So I'm going to go with what works. You could put whoever you want in there.
Yes. And that's the part that kills me, where I think people don't understand, especially the power of social media and how it can show you one side versus mainstream. Because back to that point where I'm like, okay, guys, take the names out of it. They've never attacked. Donald Trump didn't just come out of nowhere. He's been around forever.
Yeah.
Suddenly he wins office and he's a racist. He's a felon. He's a criminal. He's all these things they're telling you. They try to kill him twice, which is wild to me that like the dude like almost took a bullet in the head and we're all like, okay.
Doesn't matter.
What? Zoom out. So I started to ask the question the way I think, who doesn't want him in this job so much where they're willing to risk this? And that makes me go more towards it.
Yep.
Because if you're putting up that kind of defense and that kind of force against something, I want to question why. And you said something a second ago that, again, doesn't get talked about. The only president of the last, I think it's 40 years, to not have a war during his administration is Donald Trump. Right? Obama's got the peace medal, right? He dropped more bombs than any president in history
which is crazy stat.
Combined.
Yeah.
But the mainstream media doesn't tell you that, so you don't know that, and most people are headline readers. And so I think that was interesting. But what I'm really excited for, my victory cigar, I'm a free market capitalist. I'm a constitutionalist, just like you are. If Trump even delivers on half of what he is saying, and to be fair, we'll get into last time how he didn't necessarily do everything. Like the Department Doge, the Department of Government, efficiency and spending.
Yeah.
You put in Vivek, you put in Elon Musk. Guys, we are spending money, and I shared it in the chat the other day. If people knew how much money we were wasting on taxes, right? Just, Kayla, can you grab my phone? If you give me my phone, I'm going to pull up the thing and read some of the stuff. Remember the thing I shared about some of the taxes we're wasting right now? We are spending so much money in this country. I don't think people understand the stuff that we're wasting money on, that they've got to bring in an entire department to get ahead of this. And that's what I think people came out and supported and voted for. And they just don't understand. I mean, take it for a second. I'm going to pull that up while I figure out exactly some of the stuff we were wasting
well,
money.
I know. So Elon Musk, he was even saying, so when he was on Rogan, he was saying that since the country is founded, we've essentially had 2 bureaus or 2 organizations that have been started every single year for like 400 years or whatever.
Yeah.
We have too many different organizations running things that some of them overlap, some don't overlap, but they just have too many people in that division that are getting paid to essentially do nothing, and it's not needed.
So Colin Rugg, it's his tweet. I think it's how you say it, RUGG, on X. I'm going to read you the whole tweet. In honor of Elon and Vivek being picked as the heads of Department of Government Efficiency, Doge, here are some of the dumbest uses of your tax dollars. These are real confirmed tax dollars. $20,000 to drag shows in Ecuador. $30,000 to study the secret language of butchers in Paris. $750,000 for the New York Metropolitan Opera fire alarm. $350,000 to develop AI smart toilets. $660,000 to study the impact that COVID had on Russian women. That's real money. Those are real tax dollars at work.
The hard part that people don't understand too is that a lot of times when a bill gets put in that they're trying to pass, and it ends up getting polar opposite people talking about it, and they're like, well, I can't believe you're not going to push this through. They slip nonsense in like that, and there's people that are actually reading all of the details, and they're like, well, no, Mr. Trump, we shouldn't put that in. Or then Biden's on the other side like, well, yeah, no, we don't put that one in, but put this one in. And so nobody can agree because there's just nonsense things. And
100%. And Elon came out and he said something. I'm very excited for this because I think it's a way forward. People have to get back to understanding we don't work for the government. The government works for us.
Yep.
And that's been misunderstood by, I feel like, my generation and especially the new generation of everyone that's going with it. So Elon comes out and what he does, what I think is such a smart, it's like 5D chess. He says something and he speaks it into existence. And what's going to end up happening is he's going to deliver on it. And now they're going to start looking at every other branch of government, maybe even down to the city and local level, which is the way it's supposed to work. The federal government's actually not supposed to have that much power if you read the Constitution. And it's going to become the new norm. And what he said was, we are going to live stream every meeting of this department. And if you agree or disagree with something, you'll have a voice. You'll have a chance to participate. Imagine that. Government transparency and oversight.
I've been wanting that for years. I was like, if I pay taxes and I can see where my funds, like when I'm paying those taxes, I would like to have an itemized receipt of like where things are going. Like I'm fine, police department, fire department, you know, hospitals. But like when you're not getting what your dollar is, what you're spending your dollar on, you're not getting that back. Like, why am I paying taxes?
You mean you don't want to spend $660,000 studying the COVID impact on Russian women?
No.
Man, who the fuck comes up with this? Like, it's mental to me. And
well, it's someone in there that's getting, Johnny's brother, Johnny's cousin. Oh, I'd like to have a job. Oh, we can put you on this board.
100%, and make it local again, right? Think about Manchester. We've witnessed two different administrations. Joyce Craig on the way out, who thank God she didn't win governor of New Hampshire.
That was also a very
that would have
big
been
win,
worse
too.
for us than anything.
Correct. We were very worried about that one.
But now Jay Rua, who we've had on the podcast, come in. Come to find out, Rue, however the fuck you say, I don't know the fuck you say it, all right? Shout out to Jay, I love you, but Mayor Jay, I don't know. So staying with that, we saw firsthand the funding of Manchester.
Yeah.
Manchester was welcoming all this homeless, welcoming all these programs, and they weren't allocating the resources. So it became a problem where local businesses were leaving, residents were leaving, landlords like us were frustrated. An administrative change comes in, they reallocate those funds, they appropriate those funds correctly, they redirect those funds, and suddenly everyone in the city feels that positive impact. That is leadership. That's all we're looking for here. So staying with that, with the positives, now I want to talk about some of the negatives. Last time Trump was in office, and I know he's tried to address this, the facts are he spent more than any president in history. Now, COVID played a role in that, sure, fine. He spent more than anyone. He didn't shrink the government. In fact, he expanded it.
Correct.
Do you think this will be different, and if so, why?
So, on the swamp, I think it'll be different.
Drain the swamp.
Only because, and I say that, but then he has Gates, who don't really understand why he put him as Attorney General, but we can talk about that in a second. I think draining the swamp, the issue was that he didn't have a blueprint getting into office. Yeah. Like, no one has a blueprint being president.
He did say that. He did say he wasn't. He didn't think he was going to win.
If you come in through a political lens and you were a politician, you probably have circulated certain people. You've met certain Senate leaders, government leaders. He maybe has, but more on the business real estate side. But when you're actually running a country, he didn't know any of that. So when he gets in there, there's people that are in the swamp that maybe he's trusted from some of his business relationships that are like, yeah, this person, they would be great in the Senate seat. They have this person, they would be great. And since he doesn't really know, he's got to hit the ground running. So he's going to go with it. So I think the first time that he was in there, he probably learned a lot on who should be in there, who shouldn't. I also think that prior going into this, he's aligned himself with people that we know that we've like Tulsi Gabbard, for example.
Yeah. Big
I liked it a lot when she was running the first time, actually on the Democratic side, and then abused Kamala.
Mike Bugaki's coming back on, and he just sent me a photo of him yesterday with Tulsi. We're gonna have him back on the podcast to talk. He was her.
Was he doing the train? I saw a training video of her just like yesterday.
He was doing. He was her like security detail a couple months ago. So he's gonna be back on. I think we've got him scheduled, right? Yeah, we've got him scheduled coming back on just to talk about when there's a change like this, what it does to basically United States presence on the global stage.
But Tulsi, they pitched her as being corrupt when she was running for a Democrat, and then she ended up slipping out.
Who fought for this country.
Correct, but then she ended up coming out of politics completely because she was the governor of Hawaii, right?
She
initially, but then I think she stepped out, and I think she was just doing a podcast or whatever. But again, another lifelong Democrat that now has seen like, if I'm going to try and make a difference, this is going to be the best option. So I think him aligning himself with people that don't have as much of a vested, they have a vested interest in the country. They don't have a vested interest in their pocketbook.
That guy's making the Avengers, man.
I agree.
It's insane. And Elon said it best. It's like the best people are usually busy in the private sector. They don't have time for this. But what Elon said was there's times in history where the public sector needs more help than the private sector, and it's critical. Elon Musk, the smartest guy I know. I don't know how you can, guys like busy, like running multiple billion-dollar businesses.
Correct. Him and Vivek, both billionaires that are very smart.
I know the stress we have. And he's doing multiple. For him to come out and say this is this important right now, I think that showed how important this election was, and I think people showed up as a result of it. He said he was a lifelong Democrat. RFK Jr. is clearly a lifelong Democrat. Tulsi Gabbard, they're switching, and I don't know, man. Like, what was the meme going around? It was like you've got Elon Musk, you've got Tulsi Gabbard, you got RFK Jr. versus like the P Diddy like diddler list.
Yes,
that's like what the election came down to. And I mean, people showed up, and I don't want to get into conspiracies too much, but suddenly 20 million Democrats just.
Well, they did get the Amish. They did get the Amish to come out.
Dude, that's wild. Did you end up seeing the article? I was talking
I
about
don't
the guy.
think I saw the
Oh,
article.
I have to get his name. We'll have to link to his name, but
He was the one that just he went and knocked on doors, right?
He knocked. He took a systematic approach, and I don't want to butcher it because I only read the article quick and I don't remember all the details. But essentially, he's like some kind of statistician or something, and he realized that Pennsylvania was going to be a critical state, and he looked at it after 2020, and he realized that if he could get the Amish vote, first I think he realized the number you would need in Pennsylvania to win Pennsylvania.
Yep.
And he realized the Amish weren't voting and they were under attack. I mean, they were coming for the raw milk. They were coming for their way of life. They're coming for all these things. So he made it his mission over the last 4 years to get them to register as voters and to get them to go out and vote. And in doing so, he basically won Pennsylvania for Trump. This guy didn't know Trump. He didn't have any. He's just a statistician who didn't like the way America was going. And you want to talk about taking action. And now he's being recognized on social media. And again, we'll get his name maybe for the show notes. But
you saw the horse and buggies that were going?
Oh my God.
With the Trump flags?
That's the greatest.
Which is crazy.
It's the most American thing ever. I don't know how else you get around that. But on the real estate stuff where this shows up, and this is what I find interesting, Kamala actually would have been better for our business.
Well, we found that out with Biden too.
Yeah, well, 100%. And that's what I think people got to understand. Like, just because you might have a political leaning one way, your job as an investor, your job as a thinker, and Robert Kiyosaki has this great analogy. He's like, think of it, Republicans, Democrats, the two-party system. Think of it like a quarter. There's heads and there's tails. Your job as an investor is to stand on the edge. And you need to be able to invest and navigate the market if it goes left and navigate the market if it goes right. If the Democrats had won, they were going to continue to subsidize housing. They were going to give incentives to build more housing. They were going to do things that business-wise would have been better probably for Commonwealth Collective. We'll adjust to the economy. But I also know, I think this election was so important. I got the outcome I wanted, and we'll deal with the repercussions going the other way. I don't know if you agree with that or disagree with that. But
yeah, I mean, I do agree. I think that some of the tax cuts and the regulations that he cut the first time that he was in office, that for us, we do figure it out, but there's other people that potentially might want to get into business that get concerned when they don't have confidence in an administration or in confidence in how steady an administration can keep an economy. So I think for us, having a little bit more, we can take maybe a little bit more risks, knowing kind of where the trajectory of the country is going, and knowing that less regulations are going to hopefully be in place. Yep. I know, again, Jay Rouet said the same thing. He goes that our goal for Manchester, they've had regulations that are in place for 60 years that are just nonsense.
They just don't fit anymore, yeah.
And they just don't fit, and it's too expensive. The cost of entry is hard. For us, we don't maybe have necessarily as much of a cost of entry, but it's still a cost. People don't understand to try and do engineering is very expensive. The lawyer costs, everything for a development standpoint is very expensive. If you cut some of those regulations down, that one is going to help us, but it's also going to help have housing, which is one of the biggest issues that we have in this country too.
You remove the red tape. I mean, before you even count the immigration influx, before you count population growth,
that's wild in itself.
We're 7 million housing units short. The way we're going to get there fast and effectively, and this is where I think ultimately it will be okay in Trump's economy, is if you can cut red tape and financially incentivize builders and developers to build, rents will come down. We are seeing it on a micro level in Manchester. I've said it before, this time 2 years ago, there was maybe 100 units available in Manchester. Today, there's almost 1,000. That's going to get absorbed, and then we're going to have a delta again because we're not building enough. But for right now, we're seeing softening, right? Yeah. We talked about this yesterday. That's how supply and demand is supposed to work. What Trump's doing that's controversial, but I thought it was an interesting point that Patrick Bet-David made a great video on. Trump's talking about bringing tariffs back. I'm a pretty anti-tariff guy. If you study economics, Adam Smith, Milton Friedman, they're pretty anti-tariff. What I found interesting, and I'll give credit, Patrick Bet-David went a little deep on his podcast, and it turns out, so Adam Smith, if you don't know who Adam Smith is, he wrote The Wealth of Nations. He's basically considered the founder of modern economics back in the 1700s. Real life example, Hong Kong post-World War II exploded for 70, 80 years, whatever it was, under his teachings with the guy who was running it. He said tariffs do not work. He's anti-tariff, except for 2 instances. And it was when basically your country's being so manipulated and essentially so out of whack because someone's taking advantage of the playing field being so unlevel, which is the deficit we now have with China.
Yep.
That you need to put a tariff in, which ironically is exactly what Trump's doing. And the other instance was something around supply and demand constraints, and I don't recall that one, but I found the first one interesting because if you look at the trade deficit and the surplus China has versus the deficit we have, if Trump's making a big bet, he's taking a massive risk with these tariffs, and it might just be a bluff. But if these tariffs work and it brings manufacturing back to America faster than it's already coming back, because it is coming back, and it creates and stimulates a real economy because we cut government spending with Elon and Vivek, and we basically remove some of the inflationary pressure because our competitors can't undercut us so much that we just can't afford to make things in America. Wages will rise, prices will even out, and the economy will boom. But man, he has taken a big...
Well,
that's a big bet.
It is. I think that it's like kind of like when we run our business, like you objectively have to look at where you're allocating funds.
Yeah.
So the tariffs, and again, I don't know a ton about the tariffs, but the times that I hear him, I feel like people always talk about his tariffs in absolutes. Whereas like he was on Rogan and he was talking about the tariffs and putting them in place, and Rogan was like, well, isn't that going to impact and increase certain products that we have? And it can, but some of it also I think is a negotiating tactic.
Yeah.
Like I think Tim Cook, the Apple guy, right?
Yeah.
He called him and he was, if you put those, like actually called Trump and was like, put these tariffs in place, like our phones are going to have to be like $3,000. And he goes, all right, well, can we have like at least have a conversation and sit down to discuss how we could try and work something out, because we can't have you keep making stuff over in China.
Yeah.
So, do you give that person, instead of it being all tariffs, do you now say, okay, I'm going to charge you 100% on your tariff. Okay, maybe he gets it down to like a 25%. He gives the guy like a tax cut of some kind, and you can kind of work your way to trying to come to a compromise that doesn't affect the consumer here in America, but at the same time brings jobs to America, brings manufacturing back to America.
Yeah, and that's where it's like...
I think everybody listens to Trump in just absolutes, like, it's just this.
Never Trumpers. Orange man bad.
So
no more mean tweets. Just destroyed the economy in the world for 4 years. We didn't have those fucking mean tweets. I mean, it's so ridiculous. It's just wild. Back to something we touched on earlier, though, I don't think people pay enough attention to in this space. We talked about the Craig and the Ayotte election. The way this whole thing works, everyone gets caught up in the presidential. It's actually your local government plays a massive role.
Which, funny enough, up until 4 years
we never had to do it. We weren't in business.
Didn't really pay attention to it.
We weren't in business.
I remember actually going, like, when I first was like younger, just going to vote. I think it was John Kerry was like the first person I could vote for. So I voted for him, and then all these other like treasurers and all this stuff, I was like, I don't know, check, and zero idea. Oh my God. Zero cares, full send.
You and everyone else in America. Or, you just don't show up to vote like producer Nick. You just don't go. But we're giving him shit earlier. But what I realized, and this is kind of a real estate takeaway, when we choose a market, we talk about being landlord-friendly markets and municipalities. These elections have an impact. If you're thinking about getting into this space at any kind of scale, you really need to start looking at the local laws, the local regulations, what's going on, which way is the wind blowing. Here in New England, Portland, Maine has put in very aggressive rent controls. It's killed the Portland, Maine rental market. There's no new permits. They're not building anything. Somerville, Massachusetts has put in some of the most antiquated, I would say destructive condo relocation policies. It killed a lot of builders and developers out there. You've got to look at these policies and see what happens for how you're going to vote. And where I'm going with this, there's that great meme going, it's not even a meme, I guess. It's technically a graphic that shows the map of the red versus the blue. Now, the blue obviously had the large population bases, no doubt about it.
Yep.
But it was like 86% of the country was red.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, guys, like, wake up. Like, if you're still on the other side, can you at least be open-minded enough to have a conversation? Like, we know people who are attacking RFK Jr., and I'm like, okay, are you attacking the ideology of what he said, that the media told you he said? Or are you actually looking at what he's saying? Because what I'm hearing is you want no seed oils. You want to look at Big Pharma. You want to clean up the food. America is fat. Shit, I'm fat. We're all obese. We're trying to clean it up, right? I know the struggle. A guy like that coming in, like, how can we all not get behind that?
You would
I
think.
don't get the people who are not behind that. Like, tell me the logic.
It's it's the ideology and lining up with someone that you just already don't like. So it just that negative connotation just trickles down. I mean, even I feel like I heard people talking, bad about Tulsi. Same thing when she aligned. It's like, well, he paid her to like go over. It's like
like how they paid Beyonce $10 million to show up.
Yeah, Oprah Winfrey $1 million to be on there.
How'd that work out?
Spent a lot. $20 million altogether or something like that on
Have
celebrity
they given it to
endorsements.
all the people they were so worried about, man. All the cares, all
Brutal.
the victims, all the victims.
Spending $1 billion on a campaign to not win. That's
Imagine
a tough one.
You hate to see it.
That's a tough
you
one.
You hate to see it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, listen, those are a lot of our thoughts. I'm sure we made a couple of points.
And again, we'll see. We'll see. My big thing was, like, yes, I wanted Trump to win, but I also know the platform that he ran on, and he's promised a lot of stuff. So now it's going to be very interesting. Can he execute on those things?
You know what? And one of the reasons I'm excited that he's got RFK and Elon, they're not going to be yes men to him. Vivek is not going to be a yes man. Elon Musk, if you don't do what you say you're going to do, Elon Musk has no problem calling you the fuck out.
In theory, yes.
And it is
unless you have
important.
a lot of government contracts, then might skew things. This is where
I don't know. See, I think we can go deeper on that because I think Elon just is one of these guys. He just doesn't give a fuck. He truly does not give a fuck. If he gave a fuck about the government contracts, I hear that all the time. The government contracts, okay, that cuts both ways. Mm-hmm. If they're going to create the system where you need the subsidiaries to even make the business work because they've taken away free market capitalism, you have to play the game. If you come in and you remove that red line, now it's an equal playing field.
Yeah.
And I think the best thing, like it's business we talk about, it's life. If you are surrounding yourself with company and all your friends, right? And I say it all the time. I don't know if I've ever said in the podcast, but you know this as someone who knows me. One of my sayings is a good friend doesn't tell you what you want to hear. They tell you what you need to hear.
Yep.
That's friendship. I don't need yes men, right? Successful people don't have yes men.
Yep.
Tell me what you think. Be honest. I'll make a decision, and then we'll go forward. And I think Trump as a businessman gets like we said all the time in the team, we can debate in the team meetings. When we go out to the world, we're a unified front. But we can debate. I don't want yes men.
Yeah.
I don't want that in our company. I don't want it in my politics. I think Elon, especially out of all of them, RFK, Vivek, Tulsi, but especially Elon, because Elon Musk was fine before Donald Trump. He'll be fine after Donald Trump.
I agree.
Trump's putting it out there on the line. And if he doesn't deliver, this guy's going to expose you. And I just think it's going to be 4 wild and exciting years, man.
Be very exciting. I also am very excited for, after these 4 years, where we go from there, too.
Yeah, we're always excited. So that's what we got for today. Thank you guys for being here. And as always, bet on yourself.